it doesn't have to be just us that answers these questions. And then down at the bottom also, there is a reactions button. And if you hit that, there is the option to raise your hand or thumbs up or clap. Just kind of fun if you want to do that. I believe if you raise your hand, it'll kind of pull you forward so Lindsay and Susan and I can see. We're team moderating today so that we try not to miss anybody's questions or answers to the questions. And I think that's about it. Susan, did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So I do want to introduce the partners that we have here. I think I see them all. We have, I introduced Lindsay. He's, I don't know where everybody sees him, top left corner, that's where I see him. And Susan Depew, this was her whole idea, this whole Camino for Good app. So we love Susan and appreciate her. Bill Austin is in California. I think you're in California right now, aren't you, Bill? And Shaylin Austin is in Colorado. And I don't know if Bobby and Veronica are here yet. Don't see them. Hopefully we'll get to introduce you to them later. They're the tech brains behind the app. So we had about 11 people send questions in advance. And so we're going to dive into those first. We have some questions that are about the app and the inner workings of the app. And then we also have questions about the Camino and walking the Camino. So I'm going to toss some of those questions to the partners. But again, if you have an answer or you have hiked the Camino at a specific time that somebody's asking about, please feel free to say, I'd like to say something in the chat, or you can raise your hand in the reactions button. So for all of those of you who just joined us, we're getting ready to dive into the questions. And my name's Kelly Gilfillan. I'm one of the partners at Camino for Good. And we're going to get started. Thank you, Jill Rodriguez, for saying the app is fabulous. We appreciate it. I'll keep watching that now if everybody's going to be sweet like that. The first question I want to go to Bill, because you should be able to answer this one. You knew I would. This is the question, Bill. If walking in Spain, September, October, would it be warm enough in the albergues to bring just a sleeping bag liner, or do you need a sleeping bag?
Okay, so perfect. And now I know why Kelly sent that over to me, because I've walked 2 Caminos in the fall. The first one was a Francais starting in September 9th, and I'm a slow walker, so I didn't finish until beginning of November. And in the first month or so, in the middle of October, I didn't need anything. And then I did. I got a lightweight sleeping bag. I got a jacket. I got gloves, and I got like an ear buff thing, because it got cold. It got cold. Not so much on the albergues. The albergues are pretty warm. It's kind of fun. They'll start doing fires and they make it really cozy. But the mornings are cold, starting mid to late October and definitely into November. So I guess yes to both. You can start off without it, but you might not want to carry it for the first half. You won't need it, but you'll probably need something. And you can pick things up. I picked up mine, I forget where, but it's pretty easy. Okay. And I recommend it. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful that time of year. Not as crowded.
Yeah, the fall sounds good. I'm hoping this year. We'll see. Thanks for the question, Judy. And Judy Reno, is it Dave? Dave Reno? Her husband, yeah, they're very active in our Facebook group. So we love seeing their stories, and they post pictures from their Camino.
That question was from Judy? That question was from Judy?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Judy. I've been following you.
And then Susan, a lot of people do the Camino in different ways. Some people like to show up and have planned nothing, and some people will plan it all the way through. And some people will do a mix. I was kind of a mix, but I wanted to toss this question to Susan. Another question from Judy. Is it possible to do too much planning and consequently lose the sense of adventure once you get to the Camino? In other words, how much planning is too much?
Well, I remember where I was when I asked the same question. And I really did plan mine out. And I don't think you can plan too much. I think there was a lot of freedom in having it planned because I got up every day knowing exactly where I was going to stay that night, knowing they were waiting for me and they had a room ready. And I then was free to enjoy every second of that day in that moment. I wasn't anything about later. And so, but that fits my personality. I don't want to I will get a little stressed over the details. And so, knowing that the details were handled, I had no stress. So, I really think knowing your personality and going with you're not wrong, you're right. That person's not wrong, they're right, but they're right for them. And you do it your way. Did that help?
That's a good answer. Good answer. I thought I saw Susan's iPad has her hand raised. I don't. Lindsay, can you unmute her?
Susan's iPad.
Oh,
Here she is.
Where?
Susan, did you
I'll
have
just
something?
confuse everybody, so I'll unhand myself because I didn't actually know what it meant.
Okay. It just
That's
means you
okay.
want to ask a question or contribute
That's
something.
okay.
Thanks for participating, Susan. Okay. I'm going to do another Camino. There's this one, three different people sent a different version of this. And it is, what is the average amount of time it takes to complete the Camino? Related to that would be the average number of miles a day that one might travel. Lastly, do people generally stick to a schedule, or did you build in time to explore the road less traveled or something that came your way unexpectedly? So I think I'd like to kind of toss this to three different people because we all did different things. And Shay, you're coming, so get ready. Lindsay, you had a really unusual Camino because you kind of did a 1.5 or almost 2 Caminos. But what are your thoughts on that?
What was the question?
Do people generally stick to a schedule, or did you build in time to explore the road less traveled or something that came your way unexpectedly?
So I only had a one-way ticket, so I had no time frame to get back to Australia. So I took everything as it came. As it turned out, I hooked up with this wonderful Camino family and ended up sort of sticking to their schedule. But when I got to Santiago, my son was actually walking a couple of weeks behind. So I caught the train back to Astorga and then walked back with him. And it was a bit of a different experience. But I didn't do any road less travelled things. I fairly well stuck to the route, but I wasn't in any hurry, which was a great thing for me. I am not a schedule type person. I like to take my time, a bit like Bill, I guess. I think Susan really hit on it. It depends on your personality too, of how much time you've got. As it turns out, people from Australia tend to spend more time because it's such a long way to come for us. And I'd just like to add to Susan's thing. I did no planning at all for the Camino. I didn't know what it was about. I just rocked up in Saint Jean and then followed people, and that was about it. So I'm complete opposite personality to Susan, I think.
Okay, I want to go to Shay now. I think she got unmuted.
Yeah, I'm here.
Shay, how did you do it? Did you have like an average amount of miles you wanted to get to a day, or were you winging it?
I was pretty much winging it. So I actually, for those who don't know, I have not walked a Camino. I walked the Via Francigena, which is a different European pilgrimage that leads from Canterbury to Rome. And I walked from Lausanne to Rome. So I was fortunate in that I had a lot of time to spare. I was in between jobs and I ended up spending total a little over 2 months in Europe. 55 days of those were walking. So I would kind of just look at the map and day to day figure out where I wanted to end up that day. Towards the end, myself a little bit more. I wanted to challenge myself physically. I do have some right now, so I'll try to keep my answer short. But yeah, I was definitely the opposite of Susan. Every day I was thinking about, oh geez, where am I going to sleep tonight? But it always worked out.
There are guidebooks that, have it where it ends in 30 days or 31 days. And a lot of people do stick to that. One book, and we have some of the excerpts from that book, from the Camino Francis, is John Brierley's book, The Camino Guide. And he has you finish somewhere in there 30, 33 days. I did 38 days because I took an extra day in Pamplona and Leon. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had done that more. But I was on a 7-week schedule, and I knew I had wanted to leave 4 or 5 days at the end, so that I wasn't just coming into Santiago and getting on a plane. I wanted some time to process that, which turned out to be a really good idea. And I needed that. And then Bill is probably the one I'd like to walk it like the way Bill did it. is how, and not everybody can do it the way he did, but why don't you talk about that, Bill?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I thought you were gonna say you want to walk with me one time, but I guess
I do.
I was fortunate. My first Camino, they talk about how the Camino kind of finds you, vice versa, or besides the other way around. That's kind of what happened with me. I really had never hiked much at all, and life changed, and all of a sudden I found myself on a Camino, which I'd been wanting to do, but really didn't plan for it or think much about it, and didn't have to. And so, kind of like Lindsay in that sense, I just started walking, and I didn't hook up with anybody in particular or a group in particular. I kind of liked walking by myself, and walking a certain period of time by myself, and then with other people. And I went off the beaten path a lot. I went up into the Picos de Europe, which was awesome. A little hike Camino up into the hills, and if I walked a mile one day, that was great. If I walked 12, it was great. It didn't really matter to me. Whatever kind of caught my eye or my attention, and that was really good for me at that time in my life because I needed. And so because I kind of settled in on that sort of routine, that's how I've done all of my Caminos, where I'll give myself a lot of time. I don't put myself in a schedule. I don't know where I'm going to stay the night when I leave. I don't even know where I'm going to end up the night. I could end up literally a mile down the road, or if I really feel like walking, maybe 15 miles down the road. I probably average 12 miles a day. Kelly's right. Most people can do it. You can do it in about 30, 32. I did it in 2 months. So, that gives you an idea of kind of how slow and not exactly maybe goal.
Yeah, like I said, I want to do it like you do. Next one for sure. Thank you, Bill. There's a couple of questions that are similar or related. And one is it safe to do alone as a female? And are there any language barriers to consider if coming from the US? That's two different questions. And then there's another person who was asking about bringing their 13-year-old daughter. And then talking about reservations. So me personally, I never had any instances where being female was a worry for me. I think the French way, the Camino Francis is, it's pretty populated. And so you're not alone for, many days. And if you are, you can see for very far. So you can see people coming. But I think it's also wise to be cautious when you're going into the larger cities and try to be with people. And that's what I heard women saying was, I'm going to be walking into Astorga tomorrow or to Leon tomorrow. Let's walk together. And I think that's very wise to do that. I never saw any crime or anything scary along the way at all. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but I just have not had any female friends or anybody I met along the Camino that had a problem. Some of the other routes are less populated, and that might be a different situation where you would want to have a companion. But the French Way is definitely, you can be with people if you want to be, and you can be alone if you want to be. Anything to add to that, Susan?
You know, the Camino I did, the time of year I was there, it was not totally crowded, but it was social. And so I really never felt alone. And I walked 4 or 5 miles at a time every once in a while, totally alone. I wouldn't see a soul. And I'm a scaredy cat. You know, I want you to know that I lock the doors and I've got an alarm system and all that stuff. And I never, ever felt at all uncomfortable. I always felt very secure. That's a great question.
Yeah, good question, Angie. And then I would say very similar on the language barrier. The hostel owners are the ones or the bar owners where everything's a bar, whether it's a coffee shop or a bar. That when you walk into a bar, they usually know enough English to help you. And if somebody sees you struggling, they usually hop in if they have some Spanish. So I never really felt like there was a language barrier. I called ahead a few times to get a hostel because at one point our Camino family was like 6 people. So we started calling ahead, and they knew how to just say last name, number of people, and what kind of bed. So, you know, you learn that after about the first or second week, you know exactly what you need to know to get by. And then, you know, if you're practicing and you're trying, you'll actually pick up a lot more than that. But I wouldn't say that it's a barrier. They want us there. They're very hospitable and kind, and they're just such a warm people that I wouldn't consider that a barrier at all.
I have a real quick fun story to tell you on that. I would walk into a little city and I had written down where I was staying, and I would walk up to somebody and show them that piece of paper and I'd say, "Donde?" You know, where? That's about all I know in Spanish. No habla español. Donde? And 9 times out of 10, they would take me to it and show me, point me the way. And so they are such a wonderful people. It's a you walk through wonderful towns. So, but it was my donde and pointing, we got there. So
Donde, I have to remember that. Let's see. And then Susan, do you have some that are been in the chat that you want to throw out?
Oh yeah, let's do that because we've got some great ones here.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing some, but
We're going to start at the bottom. Let's start with Dana's. How does the housing work at the albergues? Are families able to stay together, specifically if traveling with my child? Who wants to answer that one? Kelly, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I don't know that any of us actually traveled with our children, but I did see a lot of families, and I am a mom. So I was you would notice automatically when you're a mom, you see those things. I think if I were traveling with my child, I probably would make reservations in advance just to make sure that we were, a lot of the hostels are just big open rooms with bunk beds like you see in the movies. And then there's also hostels that have private rooms. And I am a very light sleeper. And so once I had 4 or 5 nights in the big open rooms with the snoring and the people getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, my friend Linda and I would get a private room. It would just be 2 twin beds, and we'd pay an extra €3 or something like that. It was not price prohibitive at all. But I think if I were traveling, especially with a young person, like a 13-year-old that might be a little more shy or body conscious, I think I would definitely consider calling ahead or using a service to set that up for you. That Susan used a service called Follow the Camino, and they did a great job for her. She had a fabulous experience, and it's something to consider, do your homework and just see what that looks like. And once you learn, see if that feels good to you to do it, for Susan, it did end up feeling good. And, but there are options as you go along the way. Most of the cities have different hostels, different types of hostels. So if you're wanting to make sure your family can be in the same room or have a private room, I'd consider booking ahead.
Okay, next question is, how easy is it? Grace asked this one, and this was one of mine. How easy is it to get lost? Are all the Caminos well marked? I'll real quick say that I only did the French one, and it was well marked, but we still got lost. But again, the people are wonderful. And one day I'm following this young man, and so I had not seen an arrow in a little bit, but I'm following a young man with a backpack. I know I must be on the right way. And a guy was out working in his yard, and he starts yelling at the two of us and said, no, point that way, go that way. And so again, they kind of look out for us too. And so are the others as well marked? Bill, you've been on more routes than I have.
Yeah, so similar. Well, on the French route, I did get lost a few times, but it was more my fault than anything else. We get distracted, I just missed an arrow, and then somebody would holler at me. The Norte, not as much, and the Francigena, some parts not at all. I was always lost on the Francigena. But the Norte and the Primitivo, I think were well marked. Not as well as Francés, but well enough, and getting lost is kind of part of it. It's okay. You might stumble along
Again,
Donde.
Yeah.
Lindsay and I were in the same Camino family. And one day we were walking together and we stopped at a little farmer stand and bought a big bag of cherries. And we were so busy enjoying those cherries and just giddy with happiness at how good they were. We just followed people. We didn't pay attention to who they were or where they were going. And then a lady ran out of the yard saying, no. And like 20 of us had just followed these two people. And we had to turn around and go back. But that's the only that, and walking around in the big cities, you can get a little lost. But
yeah, cities can be tougher. Real quick story. I remember coming across the mountains on the Norte and going across a bridge, and all of a sudden I hear no. And I look back, and there was this pilgrim that I'd seen, big pilgrim I'd seen, but we never really talked much. And he pointed at me to get off the bridge and keep going straight. And then probably 2 weeks later or so, we run into each other again and became friends. So it's also another way to kind of, meet people. People are helpful. You'll need help, and you'll be able to give help. And when you do, you never know what that might lead to. Could lead to a new relationship, a new friend.
This is a great question from John. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Donna has asked another question. She said, I thought one could not make reservations for albergues, and that's certainly true of the municipals or the government-run ones. You just sort of first in, best dressed, but there's a lot of private ones that you can make reservations by phone. They know enough English, or my experience was they know enough English for you to be able to make a reservation. But you can also do it through booking.com. A lot of people are using booking.com to make reservations. And they'll hold them till a certain time of the day. I don't know, maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but if you've not turned up or haven't contacted them, then they'll just let it out to someone else.
Right. Yeah, and it is the municipals or the donativos, the big, large ones that don't take reservations. And you do want to stay at those, I think, in my opinion. They're part of the process, and you do meet a lot more people that way than in the smaller albergues. But the smaller albergues have that pilgrim meal experience, and that's also something just not to be missed. It's such a wonderful part of the Camino.
Diane has a question. Do you have to carry everything you need as you're walking, or is there some way that you can send clean clothes and supplies ahead to meet you once you get to the destination?
Yes, you can.
Part of that. Yeah, I didn't do that, but I really took to heart. There's a great little book called Walk Far, Carry Less. And I really made part of my experience, the experience of letting go of the need to have stuff. And the other thing is, you know, Spain is not a third world country. There are grocery stores and there are drug stores. And so what you forgot, you can run in and pick up and what you need. And I had a little ritual. When I got to the room, I washed my clothes and I washed myself. And I made it on those 3 shirts and 3 pairs of pants. And, you know, I'm, you know, 3 closets full of clothes back home. And so, but I guess you could, does anybody here, did you send stuff ahead and get it? Was it where it was supposed to be?
You know, I was thinking more of the sending the backpack ahead.
Oh, yeah.
So I misheard that. So that's why I said, yes, you can.
Tell how we did that, because I think I did the Camino Princess style. And this is one thing I did. Kelly, tell that story.
No, you tell it. It's your princess style.
Well, like I told you, I had it all planned and I had a reservation and I sent my heavy backpack ahead every day. And so, you know, I'm older and I just decided I was there to walk and meet people and experience everything. I wasn't there to prove anything. So I sent my backpack ahead every day and it was there every day but one. And when I got there, my backpack wasn't there. I said, you know, and and it was kind of like this. And he poured me a glass of wine and said 5 minutes. And so he went off and about 10 minutes later, I'd finished that glass of wine and he had my bag right there. Again, I just have never known people that are as nice and accommodating. And so I loved sitting in my backpack ahead.
I can't remember what that's called. Isn't there a name for that? But there's several different services. Every morning you just fill out a little piece of paper, you attach it to your bag and it says where you're going to go, your phone number, and the address of the hostel, maybe something like that. It's just like 3 or 4 pieces of information and you're trusting these people come, they pick up your bags and they take them to the next hostel where you're going to be that afternoon. I think you pay €5 for it.
Yeah, the negative to that is you made a commitment to get to that albergue by that evening. And so if you want complete freedom, you'll keep it with you. Yeah. This one is, I'd like to walk the Camino. What does it cost? Ballpark on that?
Wow. I think it could be a lot of different costs.
Princess style, it cost me about $6,000, flight included. Now I know that was a little over the top, but I did everything princess style.
I think once you're there, if you were to budget $30 a day, you would be fine. Okay. There might be a day or two you don't want to stay in albergue, maybe like a town, and you need to check out of each albergue every night. So you might want to get a little hotel rooms because you're not going to spend a couple extra days in Pamplona or Burgos or Leon, whoever. So that might add to the cost, but in general, I think $30 a day is a fairly reasonable way to budget once you're there. Wouldn't you say, Shay or Lindsay? Or
yes, I would.
Not in Switzerland, no.
Hey, Donna says that. Donna's down here saying yes, that's a good amount of money to spend.
Yeah, because you have the cost of your hostel, which can be €8 to €15, depending on whether it includes a meal. If it's 15, it's going to include that meal, which is such a value, such a bargain. And then I would stop mid-morning. I'd already been walking 2 or 3 hours. I was hungry and I'd get something to eat and then I'd pay for my lunch and then I'd get to the hostel and start all over again. You might buy a beer or a glass of wine. You might need to fill up on water because there's not water in the city or something. So, and you do stop at grocery stores and pick up apples and bananas and peanut butter for me. And then I think Grace, I'm clicking ask to unmute. I think she had a question. No, she doesn't want. Okay, she doesn't want to ask a question.
It got answered. I was going to say
awesome.
there are companies that I've heard of that can also pick up your backpack if you can't carry your backpack or choose not to carry your backpack, because you want people walking the Camino for themselves, right? For their reason, for their purpose. And they're not out to prove anything. So if they aren't wanting to carry a backpack, there are companies, but that kind of got answered. So
Yeah,
I'll go
thank
back
you
to
very
you.
much.
Okay.
Diane
And
has a great,
I wanted to add one more thing to that. I think, because I was one of those people, I wanted to walk every step, and I wanted to carry my backpack. And about 4 days outside Lyon, I got very sick. I didn't even realize I was sick for the first day. I was just really, I'm so tired today. And then after a couple of days, I realized I had a fever, and I was a couple of days from a doctor, and my friends were like, take the backpack off your back. If you're gonna walk, then send your pack ahead. And so if something happens, your knee gets hurt, or you have a stomach bug or a throat infection like I did, then it's still there. It's not something you really have to think of in advance. At the albergue every day, that's available if you need it. Okay.
Diane has a
Good.
great question. How do you manage to put your life on hold to walk the Camino? What a great question. If we could, people other than just us, answer that question. How did you put your life on hold to go? Can you raise your hand so we can see it? Can answer that question, or do I need to scroll down?
I owned my own business, so I gave myself a few weeks off. That made it a little easier.
Yeah.
But people do it in stages too. You don't always have to do it in that 6 or 7 week stint. You can go 1 year and then go back the next year. I met people along the way who had done it in 6 different stages. They'd go back and do a little bit every year. Mother, daughters, girlfriends, husbands and wives. A lot of people do that.
Donna, I
So-
think you're unmuted. What would you say to that?
I've been waiting to walk the Camino for about 20 years, and it kind of fell into my lap. I had gone to Portugal with a group for a yoga retreat, and we were going to fly out of Porto, and there I was. So I only had 10 days to I had to be back, but it just happened that way. I didn't ever really plan to walk the Portugal route. I always thought I would go, the Frances, but it happened, and 10 days was awesome. And I do hope to go back and do more of what I wasn't able to do. So it just happens. If you really want it in your heart, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, we had while we have you, somebody asked in the chat a little while ago that said they would like to hear about the Portuguese route. Do you have anything you'd like to share? Grace wanted to hear.
Oh, I walked along the sea for the first days. One thing I did learn is that every kind of cobblestone that exists is in Portugal. I lost my toenail on the second day, and I had really good shoes. So that's one thing to be aware of. And everything was marked. I started on the 29th of July. On the 1st of August, poof, the tons of people showed up. It was the beginning of holiday. There were a lot of Spaniards, Australian people. Anyway, it was hard to get a place to sleep. There were times when it could not happen and had to get a hotel. I was in a place one time, they were having a summer celebration. There were no beds in the whole town. So the Camino is getting crowded. I mean, that's been well documented. So I learned I will never walk the Camino again in August, because that's when, Europe goes on their holiday. And, a lot of Europeans will do the Caminos because it's part of the EU. So it was,
Here's a great,
it's amazing.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd love to hear more about the Canterbury to Rome walk.
Yeah.
I've been cautioned
Yeah.
against that because there's not a lot of support along the way. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Our
Thank
next
you.
question is, how is the Camino for Good determining which albergues to support? Bill, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So early on, we just tried to get the word out there to let albergues know what we were hoping to do. At the time, we weren't sure how successful we would be, but we knew we'd probably be able to do something. And there was an application form that they were able to fill out. And then we were able to go through it as a team and discuss, try to determine at that time in particular what to do with a very limited. In fact, it was our funds at the time, what to do with what we had available. And that was hard because they all needed something. And the stories were heartbreaking. And so you just do the best you can. You reach out to them, you see where they are, what they need, have things changed. So that was the beginning. Now it's kind of changed a little bit thanks to you all and everyone else that's been helping us. We've been in a much better position to help more albergues and to help them more I don't want to say seriously, but to really make a difference. So we're looking at helping albergues to get them now to the spring, not just to put some wood in their stove or to pay their electricity bill. We're actually asking them what do you need to make sure you're open when the programs do come back around. And unfortunately, that's changing. It was hoping to make it through May. Now we're hearing they're hoping to make it through September because they're not quite sure if it'll be open. So long story short, they all need it. We want to help all of them. We obviously can't, although I think you've seen we give them about 36,000 away. Give you a little heads up, we'll probably be able to give another 20,000 away this month. So that's a lot of money that can go a long way in helping these albergues. And all we're trying to do is spread it as best we can. There's some albergues we got too late and they had just closed and they weren't coming back. Other albergues, they're right on the edge. And we just try to do the best we can to determine how do we help them survive until they don't need help that much anymore. And I don't know if that's a good answer or not. It's bittersweet because it breaks your heart to read the stories, but then, being able to hear them afterwards and how appreciative they are and how thankful they are and how, like one email we got back from an albergue saying, "It's really true. I wasn't sure. The money has arrived. Oh my goodness. Thank you. They're just, it's such a wonderful thing. And again, thanks to you guys because we're really, really hoping to make some really life-changing changes for these albergues. And they will survive because of you guys and this. There will be albergues that survive, and we'll just keep looking and picking out the ones we can and open as many as we can. If that answers the question, I guess.
Thank you, Bill.
So I just want to add a bit to that. Apart from those that filled in the form initially, various people have been giving us recommendations, and then we've been reaching out, well, Bill's been doing the reaching out to those, but it is a matter of spreading our funds around to as many as we can help. And as Bill said, there's a couple that we just couldn't help. Their needs were too great and it wasn't going to be of any benefit to the Camino to sort of, what can I say? What's the word? Throw good money after bad, I guess. So there is a determination, and Bill's been doing a great job with this, I have to say.
Yeah, he does all the homework and all the translation. Google Translator is his friend.
And one thing that too, which I just real quick like to add, there have been a couple of albergues that actually didn't need any help, but they gave us albergues who they knew did need help. So they, other than like Lindsay said initially, the application process, but now we're getting referrals. People are telling their albergues that they know, and they're helping also. And that's kind of beautiful when they say, well, thanks, I could probably use the money, but I think maybe somebody else needs it more, and here's somebody who I think needs it more.
Yeah.
So
and the other thing about that, and what delights us, I suppose, is even though we can't solve all their problems, we are giving them hope. Some of them had got to, understandably, had got to a really stage of depression where there was no light at the end of the tunnel. And even though we couldn't solve all their problems and initially and see them all the way through to September, just the thought that someone was out there considering them was a great motivator, kept them sort of buoyant and light, and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. And that's certainly been very warming for me in it all.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably been at some point in their life where they just couldn't see the next step, and it's been beautiful to be able to help them take that next step. And I think honestly, people didn't know what to think of us in the beginning. What do you mean you're going to give away all your money? But that, it's been fun to have it happen, and it is all because of you guys. We did a lot of work to get it ready, but you guys buying the app and you investing in the albergues is so important to them and to us. And hopefully it makes you feel great. And I wanted to cover one question from one of the app questions, Susan, and then go to you next. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So there's one that, will I still be able to use the app and look at the photos once I've arrived in Santiago? And yes, it is always there for you. There's no, when you get to the end, it's not going to go away. In fact, if you want to, in the settings under the menu, there's a reset button now, which we added, I don't know, a month and a half ago, thanks to Veronica and Fabio. And I know they're here now. I don't know where they are because I can't see them, but they worked hard to make that happen because people wanted to walk it again. And so you don't need to pay again. You can just hit that reset button and start over. I think the only thing is it does not erase your passport stamps. They stay, but the mileage will clear out and you can start over and do it again. I'm on my third time now. So I love it.
And we are adding to it. So you might see something, you probably definitely will see something new the second time around.
Yeah.
KG asked a question and Kathy gave her a great answer, but I'm going to throw it out here. KG asked footwear recommendation, and Kathy said supportive hiking boots already broken in. I walked my entire Camino in trail running shoes instead of boots. So that's an option as well. But I hike every day in my trail running shoes.
Yeah, I think the important thing is walk a lot of miles in those shoes before you leave. A lot of people will buy shiny new shoes and take off for the Camino and end up with blisters. And if you're going to get blisters, you want it to be at home while you're training, not on the Camino. Sometimes you still get blisters anyway. And then I did my feet. I have bunions, so my feet are skinny except for the one part of my foot. And I ended up in men's boots. So if you go through a bunch of women's boots or trail runners and that doesn't work, you can also go, try the men's. And I ended up in, the guy suggested the boots that Bill had been wearing for all his Caminos. And so I tried those and ended up in those. But I have heard people who've been really happy just doing the trail runners. I think it's just important to break them in before you go.
So I've got something to add to that. I also take sandals, like toe-covered sandals, and I walk in those when it rains because I hate getting wet socks. So I hate walking in wet socks. So I'll walk in sandals in the rain. They have to, the toe has to be covered though, because you get all sorts of things in. Not everyone agrees with me on this, and the footwear subject is one that you could talk for hours and never actually get a resolution. My experience is get one size greater than you would normally get. If it feels comfortable in the shoe shop, you probably need to go to the next size up. But that's just me.
Yeah, and go to a hiking store, an outdoor gear store. I went to REI, and that poor guy went through 14 pair of boots with me before I found my boots. And the other thing that Lindsay made me think of, you do want to have something to wear at night. You want to take your boots off or your trail running shoes off and let them rest and let your feet rest. So it's good to have a pair of sandals just to wear. I had a pair of Tevas that I would put on at night. And it's funny because when you get to the cities, you think you're going to be tired. Well, I usually shower and start walking again just so I could see the city. And so it's good to have a lightweight pair of sandals or something. And then some people also carry a very lightweight pair of flip-flops to wear in the shower. There's all kinds of footwear.
One quick thing to that, and you're right, it's so amazing. You walk all day long and you get to where you're going to be, and then you end up walking again that night. But also really, really important, if you at any time, even if it's after you just put your boots on, just put your backpack on, and you've walked 15 feet, if you feel anything like a pebble you missed or something in your shoe, take the time, put the backpack down, take your boots off. You'll be tempted not to, and that will cause you a lot of trouble. Get rid of anything that doesn't feel like it should be in that boot. Get rid of it, because it'll cause you problems, even when you don't want
the tiniest little thing, yeah, but you want to get it out for sure. Judy held up her pretty shoes that she would wear after. Yeah, Crocs. I saw a lot of people with Crocs. Like those are tie-dye. Those are cool.
Wow.
So Tommy has suggested that we read Timothy Egan's Pilgrimage to Eternity. That sounds really good. Thank you for that recommendation. Then let's see. This is a great question. And again, it's pretty personal to the person. It's how physically fit were you before you started the Camino? How much walking prep do you do? Who wants to answer that one?
You want me to go real quick?
Sure.
Just real quick. So I didn't walk at all before. I did a test hike and realized my back was way too heavy, but I was active. I would say I was in shape. I didn't realize the difference between the kind of shape I thought I was in and the kind of shape the Camino would ask you to be in. But I've seen all types. I've seen people that were really out of shape and were still walking it, or people that were in great shape and running half of it. So I guess it just kind of depends on you.
And as you can imagine, I'm the planner and it's got to be planned. So I had a training schedule, and that's how Kelly and I got to know each other. We met for coffee. A friend of a friend told us that we were going around the same time. And so I said, I have a schedule. And she said, I want to train with you. And we did 5 days in a row, 12 miles every day, carrying our heavy packs to make sure we could do it. And it's hilly in Middle Tennessee where we are. So we climbed those hills. And 3 of those 5 days, it rained and we walked anyway. And that was really good training, because it probably rained 10 to 12 days of my 40 days on the Camino. And so how physically fit were you before you started? I mean, I felt like I was ready for those miles. But again, I'm older and I did not want to get over there and be sore or get sick. And so I really trained. But again, it's personality too. I could not have done what Bill did.
I think the other thing I'd throw in there is I was a runner, and so I did yoga a lot because of tight hamstrings, but I stopped running and only hiked because it turns out to just be really different muscles. So even if you're a runner, you still should hike a lot before you go. I mean, we hiked 400 plus miles before we left, Susan and I did. And we knew each other very well.
So,
Now, Lindsay is a prolific hiker. He's hiked all over Australia, and maybe he has a different story.
well, my training consisted of having lattes in coffee shops, and I didn't have any difficulty at all on the Camino. But as Kelly said, I've done a lot of heavy backpack hiking, and even though I hadn't done it for some time, my muscle memory was still there. So it was like when I put my backpack on, it just such a relief. I feel like I'm coming home. So I love putting my backpack on and getting on the road. So I just have faith that my body will do what it needs to.
And if it doesn't, stop and rest.
Yeah, stop for coffee. Suzanne has a great idea. If I understand what the idea is, we only have about 7 more minutes left, but Suzanne's saying, what about if you'd reach into chat and list where you're walking? So we're all on a virtual Camino. but where do you actually, like I walk in Nashville, Tennessee. If you'll write down where you're walking, we can see that real quick. And I think this is going to be fun. Do you mind doing that?
Marietta, Georgia.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Oh, fun. Naples.
Scotland,
Sydney,
Pacific,
Australia.
Sydney,
Penrose, Scotland.
Kansas,
been there.
Phoenix, Saskatchewan. Hi,
Wow.
Joy.
Vancouver, London, Ontario.
Ooh, Belfast. Haven't been there.
Yeah. Wow. New York City, Alan, way to go.
England. Philippa, hello.
Hmm.
Susan and
Wow.
I have a dream of walking in the Cotswolds together from coast to coast in the in England.
New Jersey. Wow. Great places.
Newmarket. The Newmarket in London. Awesome. New Hampshire is so beautiful. Nashua. I got to hike on the Appalachian Trail in New Hampshire. It was so beautiful, in the White Mountains. Susan, did you have another? I have a couple more questions, but did you have some that were?
Nope. I think I went through. Somebody asked, what do you do if you get there and there's no beds? And somebody was,
Right.
I think, answered and said, you keep on walking, and you do. So I
I-
think you got it all.
So
There
I've
is an
got
option
something.
to take. Oh, there's an
I've got-
option to take a taxi if you were really late and it was dark and you didn't want. There are taxi services, and you could take a taxi to the next town, get a room, and then take the taxi back in the morning if you wanted to make sure you walk the whole thing. I saw a lot of people doing that because they were late coming into town. Go ahead, Lindsay.
There are a lot of places that are off track that will come and pick you up from the track and drop you back the next day. So even though they're not, you wouldn't come across them while walking, and they're good for the overflow. All you have to do is ring them, and it's part of their business model to come and pick you up. So you're really never going to be out of accommodation. It's just the extra logistics that might be involved to get there. I suppose that we saw that happen all the time.
And I mean, the hostel owners, if you get there and they're full, they're happy to, they kind of speak to each other during the day, especially once it's crowded, and they'll know, they'll even ask you, do you want me to call ahead and get the room in the next town? It's only 2 kilometers. Yes, please. Thank you. And, but there's a lot of options. You're not going to be stranded or sleeping outside. Unless you're like Bill and you just want to put a hammock up and sleep outside. And then I saw another one about sending the packs ahead. We may have covered that, but you do that at the hostel. If you want to send your pack ahead, you just have to know where you're going, because you have to be able to put the name of the albergue and the address.
The thing with that too is you don't actually have to be staying at the albergue you're sending it to. So you could send it to a known albergue and just pick it up from there. If you haven't booked in there. I've seen people do that.
But if you do that, you should tip them something for putting up with your backpack.
Whatever, but you don't, if you haven't booked ahead, it doesn't mean that you can't send your pack ahead.
Okay. The other, that brings up something when it is busy. So if you start in like April, May, it's not as crowded. And if you start in September, October, it's not as crowded. But if you are going between June and August, it will be crowded. And so you do have to kind of think ahead. And if you don't want to plan, then get up early. You need to be one of the first people out of the albergue and be a steady walker. A lot of people get up at 5 in the morning and they'll be in the next town or the town that their destination by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And because they want to be the first one in the shower, make sure they get some hot water, and then walk around the town. And that is a great way to have more time in the towns and see the towns, is to get there early.
Kelly, we're about out of time.
We are. This flew by.
Now,
Yes.
I'd like to give apologies to some people may have joined, and I gave the wrong times initially on the thing because I didn't understand that North America was going into daylight savings. So everyone else but North America was an hour earlier. So thanks for bearing with us on that one.
Give yourself a little grace there, Lindsay. Somebody asked, what's the best practical guidebook? I think we all recommend John Brierley's Camino Guide, and he has multiple treks, not just the Camino Francais. He has been very supportive of our app, so we would love it if you would support him. He actually, there it is. Bill is holding it up. There are some other really good ones too. And I think one of the things I did as far as books go, I actually read a lot of personal accounts, and I even read some fictional accounts just to kind of get a feel of what it was going to be like. But I think mostly I talked to Bill for hours and hours and hours about what was going to happen and how it was going to be. But it's a beautiful experience. And, you know, Buen Camino is, you know, beautiful Camino, have a beautiful Camino. And so we wish all of you that tonight. Thank you for coming. We are, you know, we're here. If you guys have questions, all of our first names are, it's Kelly at Camino for Good, Susan at Camino for Good, Bill, Lindsay, Shay. So if you have any questions, we're always happy to talk about the Camino. It's hard to shut us up.
Thank you,
everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Buen Camino.